Really? Okay. Any way to communicate? We're having technical difficulties? Okay.
Testing, testing.
Alan, can you hear me? No.
It's 5:14, testing the sound, testing the sound.
Give the report.
All right, can you hear us okay?
Yep.
Okay. So an application has been received to sever a parcel having a frontage of 60.96 meters, a width of 69.96 meters, a depth of 45 meters, and having an area of 2,787 square meters, and retain a parcel having an area of 400,000 square meters as a severance of a dwelling made surplus through farm amalgamation. The subject lands are approximately 403,000 square meters in total, or 99.6 acres in area, with a depth of 670 meters and a frontage of approximately 680 meters onto the north side of Norfolk County Road 60 in the geographic township of Walsingham. The lands are designated and zoned agricultural. The lands to be severed would create a lot rectangular in shape, and the would front onto Norfolk County Road 60. The application identifies that the parcel to be severed contains a single detached dwelling and a shop, which are to be retained. The lands are in a primarily agricultural area and are surrounded by farms in all directions. The proposed retained lands contain 2 barns, which would continue to be used to support the agricultural use of the retained lands. Planning staff consider the subject application to be consistent with the policies of the provincial policy statement and conform to the official plan. Staff support this application and recommend that it be approved subject to conditions. And just to note those conditions for the committee. In addition to our standard conditions, there are an additional 4, including conditions pertaining to the entrance, as well as to a dedication, as well as spatial separation from building, and evaluation of existing on-site sewage systems. Just to note some specific conditions to this application. But again, staff are in support, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do any members of the committee have questions for staff? Okay, is there any member of the public that wishes to speak? You can star 67 to unmute now. Okay. No questions for the committee or members of the public. Could I have somebody we have a recommendation from staff that the application be approved subject to conditions. Could I have a member of the committee make a motion to approve?
Rudy moves approval.
Thank you, Rudy.
Lisa will second.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. The subject application is consistent with related policies of the Provincial Policy Statement 2020 and the Norfolk County Official Plan regarding farm dwellings, and no public input was received and therefore has not been considered as part of this application. All in favor of approval? Adam?
Yes.
Alan?
Yep.
Lisa?
Yes.
Marcel?
Yes.
And Rudy?
Yes.
Okay, the application is approved.
Thank you.
Okay. The next application is file number BNPL 2021089. The applicants are Ian and Susie Anderson, and the address is 153 Woven Street, Port Rowan. And I'm going to ask staff to give the report.
Sorry. That was my cue, wasn't it? Just still dealing with our technical issues.
Is now exiting.
All right. Okay, so an application has been received to sever a parcel having a frontage of 61 meters, a width of 61 meters, a depth of 87 meters, and having an area of 4,277.4 square meters, or 1 acre, just over 1 acre, and retain a parcel having an area of 23,384.28 square meters, or 5.78 acres, as the creation of a lot. The subject lands are approximately in total 27,661 square meters, or 6.83 acres in size, and front onto Woven Street in the urban area of Port Rowan. The lands are currently vacant and have previously been used for agricultural purposes. The surrounding lands are residential in nature to the west and agricultural in use to the north and east. South of the property is more residential uses as well as a marina. Planning staff considered the subject application to be consistent with the policies of the PPS and conform to the official plan. Staff support the application and recommend that it be approved subject to the attached conditions. And again, I will note the conditions for the committee. So a parkland dedication, receipt of a letter from Environmental and Infrastructure Services Division regarding water connections for the severed lands, and entrance permits for the severed and the retained. There is also a receipt of a letter from Development Engineering indicating that the requirements regarding property dedication be satisfied regarding a site triangle on Woven Street. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Okay, does any member of the committee have questions for planning staff? Okay, no questions from committee members. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak regarding this application? Okay, we have a recommendation from staff that the application be approved subject to the attached conditions. Could I have a committee member move that recommendation?
Hey, you never heard me there earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is Ian Anderson.
Okay.
With one of the conditions on condition 4, the right-of-way, I don't think that's necessary because on the other 2 lots that I severed previously, there's no right-of-way either, and it would make no sense to have a right-of-way there also.
Point of clarification. So are you talking about condition 5? It would be about the site triangle?
No, the site triangle's fine.
Okay.
But they asked for an ROW also on the Woven Street. Sorry, on Woven Street.
Dedication to county property along Woven Street and the property design site triangle? Is that what you're
You can see the previous 2 lots, they never had that that right away.
Okay, so I think they're referring to the site triangle. We'd have to defer to our development engineering team to confirm that, because that is a condition. And so the site triangle would be specific to this one being at the corner of East Quarter Line and...
Yeah, the site triangle is fine.
Okay.
So can I ask a question? So there is or there is not a right of way?
No, my property goes right to the road.
Can the planner comment on that, please?
Yeah, like my understanding is it goes to the road as well. My understanding of that condition is based on the site triangle. My understanding also was that Mr. Anderson was in communication with the development engineering team regarding this.
I'm just wondering if there's a little mix-up in the terminology that maybe he thinks he's calling it a right-of-way when it may be the part of the road allowance. Is that a possibility?
It just doesn't say anything about a right-of-way in the condition.
I didn't see it either.
There was an ROW that was in one of the emails sent to me today at 2:00.
Okay. We don't see that on the application or the report conditions. It doesn't say anything about a right-of-way. And if that's an email that you received today, I'm going to suggest that we can approve the application as it stands, and you can clarify that with planning staff and the
that's
engineering
good.
department.
Yeah, that's all good.
Yeah.
Is with staff? Okay, so I'm going to ask that we have someone move the recommendation for approval.
Alan moves approval.
Okay, Alan, I got. And seconder?
Marcel, second it.
Thank you, Marcel. Okay, so the subject application is consistent with related policies of the Provincial Policy Statement 2020 and the Norfolk County Official Plan, and no public input was received and therefore has not been considered as part of this application. All in favor of approval? Adam?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Marcel?
Yes.
And Rudy?
Yes.
Okay, the application is approved, and the applicant can contact staff with regards to the email for further clarification. Okay, the next application is file number ANPL 2021-090. The applicants are Justin and Emily Crook, and the address is 878 St. John's Road East, Port Dover. And I will ask staff to give the report.
All right. An application has been received to construct an addition to the existing dwelling that would connect an accessory structure requiring relief of 12.95 meters from the required minimum front yard of 13 meters to permit a decreased front yard of 0.05 meters. The subject lands are approximately 9,550 square meters in size and front onto the south side of St. John's Road East in the geographic township of Woodhouse. The lands currently contain an existing dwelling, with the previously existing garage being lost to a fire within the last year. The applicants are proposing an addition on the home, a carport, attached garage, and the replacement of a garage previously destroyed by fire. The lands are characterized by a sloping yard, which leads into lands zoned hazard lands. The surrounding land uses are residential and agricultural in nature. I would just like to note at this time some comments from the building inspector as well as the development engineering team regarding the application, just for the applicant's sake, just regarding separation, as well as kind of the location of carports and accesses. This application was reviewed in addition to our departments. It was also subject to the Long Point Region Conservation Authority's regulation review as well. The proposed application to permit an increase in the front yard setback in the A zone or agricultural to 4 tablets in the following ways. The application conforms to the general intent and purpose of the official plan because it is consistent with agricultural policies. The application conforms to the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as the increased front yard setback would allow the existing building to be adapted for continued use and would facilitate the use of an accessory structure, which is permitted as a use. And the development is not anticipated to have any negative effects on the existing uses. The application is appropriate because it supports the existing use of the residential dwelling and it allows it to accommodate it can be accommodated, goodness me, with appropriate modifications to the proposed layout to meet all the existing county policy, including bylaw 2016-32. The application is minor because of the relatively small impact that the increased deficiency is expected to have on the subject property as well as the neighboring properties. Further, the proposed deficiencies recognize existing structures, locations, and the application as a whole supports land uses and associated designs which are typical in the area. I would also note that staff support the application, but recommend that it be approved with conditions. There are two conditions, essentially one, that a receipt of a letter from Public Works indicating the requirements outlined in bylaw 2016-32 have been satisfied concerning entrances, and that all entrances to the property are in compliance with previously noted bylaw. As per the Norfolk County Bylaw 2016-32, only one entrance is permitted for a residential lot. So any entrances or parking areas in excess of what is permitted by that bylaw would be required to be removed. So essentially that is what the condition is for. And obviously the second condition is really just identifying the time restriction. Again, as staff, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, does any of the committee members have questions for planning staff? Okay, no questions from the committee. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak regarding this application? Okay. No questions then, and staff have recommended the application be approved, subject to the attached conditions. Could I have a committee member move that recommendation?
Rudy moves approval.
Thank you, Rudy. And a seconder?
Adam.
I got Adam, thank you. All in favor? Adam,
Yes.
Alan,
Yep.
Lisa,
Yes.
and Rudy.
Yes.
Okay, the application is approved. Oops. Get it upside down. Okay, the next application is file number ANPL 2021091. It's for David Vander Sanden, 21 Turkey Point Road. And I'm going to ask staff to give the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. An application has been received to construct an addition to an existing vacation home requiring relief of 8% of the maximum permitted lot coverage of 15% to permit a coverage of 23%. So the subject lands are approximately 700 square meters in area with 16 meters of frontage along the northeast side of Turkey Point Road in the resort residential area of Turkey Point. The subject lands contain an existing vacation home with approximately 115 square meters of size, which is around 16% coverage, including an attached deck and a detached accessory building. The proposed is a 56 square meter addition to be added to the rear of the existing vacation home. All existing setbacks are being maintained. Under Section 45(1) of the Planning Act, there are 4 tests of a minor variance which must be met. It is staff's opinion that the subject application meets the 4 tests of a minor variance. And beginning, the application conforms to the general intent and purpose of the official plan because it is consistent with the resort residential policies by promoting the addition of an existing vacation dwelling in a moderate manner. The application conforms to the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as renovations to an existing vacation home is within the permitted use of Section 5.8.1, and the variances support the continued use of the vacation home. The application is desirable as the addition reinforces the existing character of the neighborhood with compatibly sized development. The application is minor because it is a relatively small increase in addition to having minimal adverse impacts on the neighboring lands while utilizing existing setbacks and being within the rear yard. Staff would be happy to take any questions at this time from members of the committee or the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members of the committee have questions for planning staff? Okay, no questions from the committee. Is there any members of the public that wish to speak regarding this application?
Good afternoon. It's Daryl here, Daryl Hagan here, representing Mr. Vander Sanden. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see everyone. Chair Crandon and committee members, planning staff. Thanks, Scott, for your support and your time, everyone. If there's anything, we have done quite a bit of work on this site. We've had geotechnical site exploration, and Stuart and Dixon have done a site plan and that are favorable. So just so you know. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Daryl. Okay, staff have recommended approval, and could I have a member of the committee move that recommendation?
Marcel
Motion
moves
to
approval.
approve by Lisa.
Okay, sorry, I got Marcel there. Seconder,
Lisa will second.
Lisa? Thank you, Lisa. Okay, all in favor of approval? Adam?
Yes.
Alan?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yes.
Marcel?
Yes.
And Rudy?
Yes.
Okay, that application is approved. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
thanks, Daryl. Okay, the next application is ANPL 2021092. The applicant is Armstrong Planning, care of Michael Audulong. And the owner is Ken Hewitt, and the address is 360 Cedar Drive, Turkey Point. And I will ask that staff give the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. An application has been received to construct a vacation home with an attached boathouse to permit multiple variances. These variances would include lot coverage increase to 43.6%. That includes the attached boathouse and the attached four-season room, an exterior side yard setback of 3.5 meters, a rear yard setback of 0 meters, and a usable floor area of 56 square meters for the attached boathouse. The subject lands are approximately 922.7 square meters in area, with approximately 23.5 meters of frontage on the east side of Cedar Drive and backs onto the canal and the resort residential area of Turkey Point. The subject lands contain an existing 70-year-old vacation home, which is approximately 156 square meters or 20% lot coverage in size. This is to be removed and replaced by the proposed vacation home with attached boathouse and four-season room. The surrounding land use is resort residential with a mix of seasonal dwellings and permitted single detached dwellings through special provision 14.14. Many of the surrounding dwelling units have higher lot coverage beyond zoning provisions. For example, properties such as 370, 300 Cedar Drive all have developments similar to what is proposed on the subject lands. During staff's site visit, staff noted the character of Cedar Drive is changing from an older, more traditional seasonal cottage to larger vacation homes. Staff would note in terms of circulation that there were comments provided from multiple departments, none of concern with regard to the application, but wanted to address parts of the building permit items from the building department with regard to septic, as well as engineering with regard to lot grading, entrance, and modifications to the entrance. Staff would note that we circulated to Long Point Conservation Authority, who are in support of the application, subject to getting permit approval from them. They have listed a number of items that need to be done prior to that permit approval. In terms of planning comments, at the end of the day, staff are looking at this from the four tests of a minor variance. It's staff's opinion that the application in this instance conforms the general intent and purpose of the official plan, conforms the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The development is desirable and appropriate, and as well is considered minor. Staff did note that we have two conditions, and the basis of the conditions is what's making this lot actually larger than what seems to be currently, because the owner has just gone through a process of purchasing part of the road allowance from the county. This has been supported by council, but it has not gone through final approvals, as there are conditions to that sale. Staff have included some of those conditions just to ensure that purchasing does go through, as the end value that staff are looking at in terms of lot coverage is based on that lands being purchased and properly acquired. Therefore, staff want to make sure that those lands do in fact get acquired, and if not, this application would not address the true nature of the property. So those two conditions have been added to address, but staff at large support the application and would be happy to answer comments. Prior to me signing off, I did want to note, staff did receive public input with regard to the application, and therefore it was considered as part of the recommendation. Staff received 10 letters of support from neighboring property owners, including the shared property line neighbor at 362 Cedar Drive. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, do any committee members have questions for planning staff?
I do. Were there any letters received that were not support?
Through the chair, we did not receive any letters of objection to the subject application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak regarding this application?
Hi there. Yes, this is Sandra Sheebley. I'm the homeowner, and I just wanted to thank staff for their time in this report.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Okay, staff are recommending approval subject to the attached conditions. Could I have a member of the committee move that recommendation?
Rudy moves approval.
Thank you, Rudy. And a seconder?
Lisa will second.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, all in favor. Adam? I think I heard a yes. Alan?
Yes?
Lisa?
Yes.
Marcel?
Yes.
And Rudy?
Yes.
Okay, that application is approved. Thank you. Okay, the next application is file number BNPL 2021-102. The applicant is John Kozicki, and the address is 1048 Highway 59, Port Rowan. And I will ask staff to give the report.
An application has been received to sever a parcel having no frontage, a width of 25.36 meters, and a depth of 9.14 meters, and having an area of 231.6 square meters, to retain a parcel having an area of 4,028.4 square meters as a boundary adjustment. Lands are to be added to the existing parcel located immediately adjacent to the northwest, with a roll number of which I'll spare you, but of a civic address of 153 Front Road. The final lot size being created by this proposal would be 0.38 acres or 1,567.26 square meters. I would note for the committee that I realized an error in my site features and land use section of the report. So I hope you'll take my verbal explanation, but that is incorrect section. So the subject lands front onto Highway 59 and Front Road, as you can see in this slide, kind of is in that front corner. The parcel we're speaking to today is just onto Highway 59 in Port Rowan. And the lands are currently include a commercial use, being an old restaurant that is currently not being utilized. The surrounding land uses include residential, commercial, and agricultural. just to kind of speak to, so as you can tell from the slide, the proposed application is intended to, just adding someone in here quick. There we go. The proposed boundary adjustment, the intent is to make the
Jonathan Kozicki
is now joining.
parcel a little bit bigger, and I think the applicant just joined in, and to facilitate that squaring out of that lot. I would note one condition. So upon review, this site is a bit confusing. Sorry, back the wrong way. In the zone. I think I have the zoning layer here. That's okay. So the portion where the restaurant currently is, kind of where that paved area is zoned CS or service commercial. While the parcel to the northeast, northwest is still considered under the ag parcel. And so we're just trying to in an effort to try to clean up the zoning, condition was proposed for this severance that a rezoning for that portion that is subject to the application today to realign the zoning with the appropriate parcels. So a condition, therefore, is to have a rezoning to amend severed parcel and kind of bring it back into conformity with the rest of the proposed recipient parcel. Other than that, staff have no major concerns, and we did not hear any concerns from the public. Planning staff considered the subject application to be consistent with the policies of the PPS and conform to the official plan. Staff support the application and recommend that it be approved and subject to those attached conditions. Again, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Okay, does the committee have any questions for planning staff? Okay, no questions. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak regarding this application? Okay. Staff have recommended approval subject to the attached conditions. Could I have a committee member move that recommendation?
Alan moves approval.
Thank you, Alan. Seconder?
Marcel moves.
Thank you, Marcel. Okay, all in favor. Adam? I'm not hearing Adam.
Here, hello, yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Marcel?
Yes.
And Rudy?
Yes.
Okay, that application is approved. Okay, the next application is file number ANPL 2021-106. The applicant is Joshua Sanders and Laura Ricketts. The address is 18 Wyndham Road 2, Norwich. And I will ask staff for the report, please.
Can I just interrupt a minute, Linda? There's somebody has a microphone open and it's causing a lot of interference, and I can't. It's going over the audio.
Okay. Could I ask everyone who's not speaking to please mute? Okay, and we'll ask staff to give the report, and let me know, Alan, if it doesn't improve.
Thank you.
I was just going to do a sound check. Can you still hear us okay?
Jonathan Kozicki
Is now exiting.
So an application has been received to construct a 21.4 meter by 12.8 meter accessory building requiring relief of 87.8 square meters from the maximum usable floor space of 200 square meters to permit a total usable floor area for all accessory structures of 287.8 square meters. The subject lands are approximately 20,598 square meters, or just over 5.09 acres in size, and front onto the south side of Wyndham Road 2 in the geographic township of Wyndham. The lands currently contain an existing dwelling and a picnic shelter shed. The applicants are proposing an accessory structure to house personal goods such as land maintenance equipment and recreational vehicles. And the lands are characterized by a sloping yard, which leads into land zoned hazard lands, which you can see on the slide there, kind of quickly where it drops off. The surrounding land uses are agricultural in nature. The proposed application to permit an increase in the front yard setback. Just making sure I have. Sorry, should say increased in the usable floor area meets the 4 tests in the following ways. The application conforms to the general intent and purpose of the official plan because it is consistent with the agricultural policy. Conforms to the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as the increased front usable floor area would facilitate the additional use of an accessory structure, which is a permitted use. And the development is not anticipated to have any negative effects on the existing uses. It is appropriate because it supports the existing residential dwelling and is comparable in size to other accessory uses in the rural and agricultural area. The subject application is minor because of the relatively small impact of the increased deficiency or increased size is expected to have on the subject property as well as neighboring properties. We did note that the property that the proposed location would bring it closer to also has an accessory structure in a very similar location, so they'd abut each other. And further, the application as a whole supports land uses and associated designs and uses which are typical in the area. I would also just note that there's the support of the Long Point Region Conservation Authority was also included on this site, and it was reviewed by their team as well. And it was sufficiently away from their slope to ensure the safety as well as the long-term safety of the slope itself and limit erosion. So I'm happy to take any questions regarding this application.
Okay, do the committee members have any questions for planning staff?
So you said that the LPRCA denied the application on their end?
Did you hear the question? Okay. Okay, could you ask the question again, please?
So I asked if the LPRCA, they have denied the application at their end?
No, so they're in support of it.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, so they are in support. They did identify, I can quickly go kind of through their comments. What the main concern would be through the hazard lands close to streams, waters. You can kind of see through there, there's a water management pond, but there's some water features running through the area. And it's kind of like similar to a PSW. And so their concern is just about kind of maintaining limitations or limiting impact on those hazard lands as far as erosion as well as pollution. And although the lands in general, so the lot as a whole, as you can see from the mapping there, are prone to flooding and erosion, the specific location, which is just west of where the house is, and you can see in the aerial, is located outside of those hazard lands. So they didn't have a concern, and it would be subject to a permit through them as well. I know.
Okay, thank you. I just misunderstood what you said during your report. That's okay. Thank you.
No, I apologize. It's the muffled mask. I thought I should add, and I noted it and I forgot to speak to it. Forestry did provide to where the proposed location is, there is a grouping of trees. And so there are applicable bylaws 2006-170, which would apply to clear cutting trees. And so just for the applicant's knowledge, they would need to connect with forestry when they go through that building permit, and building would help facilitate that as well.
Okay, are there any other questions for staff? Okay, are there any members of the public that wish to speak regarding this application? Okay, staff have recommended the application be approved. Could I have a member of the committee move that recommendation?
Adam?
I got Adam.
I'll second that, Linda.
Alan?
Yeah.
Okay, and all in, oh, wait a minute here. In accordance with section 45(1) of the Planning Act, the requested relief is considered appropriate development, minor in nature, and maintains the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, and no public input was received and therefore has not been considered as part of this application. All in favor? So I got Adam and Alan.
Yes.
Yes.
And Lisa?
Yes.
Yes.
Marcel? And Rudy?
Yes.
Okay, that application is approved. Okay, the next application is file number BNPL 2021109. The applicant is David Troiani, and the address is 876 Norfolk Street South in Simcoe. And I will ask staff to give the report.
Yes, to you, Madam Chair. So an application has been received to sever a parcel having a frontage of 125.6 meters, a width of 213.17 meters, and a depth of 500 meters, leaving an area of 2.38 acres and retaining a parcel having an area of 2.39 acres as the creation of a lot in the agricultural area. So in total, the subject lands are 4.55 acres in area, or 1.84 hectares, as you can see in the slide, and are located on the west side of Norfolk Street South in Simcoe. The lands are irregular in shape and include substantial frontage on both Norfolk Street South and St. John's Road West. The lands to be severed are that 2.38 acres and would create a lot rectangular in shape with approximately 38 acres of frontage on St. John's Road West, kind of around the bend. The application identifies that the parcel to be severed is vacant, while the retained includes a single detached dwelling. The lands are primarily agriculture in area and are surrounded by agricultural use. So when we look to the provincial policy statement, specifically section 2, it speaks to encouraging the protection of natural heritage, water, agricultural, mineral and cultural heritage, and archaeological resources for the economic, environmental, and social benefits of the community. This section also speaks to prime agricultural areas specifically. Section 2.3.1 of the PPS identifies that prime agriculture areas shall be protected for long-term use for agriculture. Further section 2.3.4.1 of the PPS states that lot creation in prime agriculture areas is discouraged and may only be permitted for agricultural uses, A, B, agricultural related uses, C, a residence surplus to a farm operation, or D, infrastructure. And I can say that the committee sees many of these in addition to this clause. The application proposes to sever a vacant lot for the purposes of development. It is staff's opinion that the proposed development and associated use does not fall in the above categories. Further, the proposed use does not protect the prime agricultural area nor facilitate agricultural uses. It is the opinion of staff that the application is not consistent with the PPS 2020. Further, the subject application proposes to sever a lot for the purposes of lot creation for residential purposes, and that doesn't align with the purposes presented in section 7.2.3 of the Norfolk County official plan, and therefore does not conform with our official plan. Given this, Planning staff do not consider the subject application to be consistent with the policies of the PPS, nor conform to the official plan. So staff do not support this application and recommend that it be refused. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, do the committee members have any questions for planning staff? Okay, no questions from the committee?
Yes, Madam Chairman. What is that land being used for right now?
Nothing.
There's no crops grown in there?
Nothing.
So you're not taking, so I'm going to ask the planner to answer, is any agricultural uses being removed?
Well, this is William. I'm for.
No.
I'm asking the planner.
We're asking staff.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yes, through the chair, the land is designated agricultural. Is designated agricultural, and so the use, as you can see in aerials, some of it is still used for agricultural land, at least at that point. And the intent of this land and that policy, the designated area would be for agricultural uses. So I can't speak to necessarily what has been done this season. The applicant would be best to speak to that. But as far as kind of the policies regarding this area, it is agricultural, and that is the overarching designation. And therefore our focus, looking at these from a planning perspective or a professional planner perspective, is that maintenance and protection of that agricultural land, that prime ag, despite what uses are proposed or the zonings that currently exist on the sites, all of them have to fall within that designated use that's permitted. Hopefully that answers.
Okay, thank you. You did.
Madam
Okay.
Chairman?
Yep.
Just another question. So is this not actually part of the lot? This isn't really part of agriculture anymore, is it? Isn't that a severed lot?
So the proposal is to sever this lot from the other parcel, which currently has a newly established home, which you can't see obviously on the aerial given its age. But there is a newly established home facing Norfolk Street South, and the proposal would be to essentially sever these two parcels and create a vacant lot for the purposes of residential or development.
So it's actually separating or splitting a lot. It's not splitting a farm.
So it's splitting agricultural lands.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Okay. We're dealing with the committee and staff questions right now. So the applicant will be given an opportunity to speak, and I'll let you know when your time comes. So as my understanding from what staff's saying is the lot right now is about 4.5 acres approximately. And it's being split into just over 2 acre lots, 2.5 acre lots.
I'm a little not clear on so the subject lands to the north, behind the restaurant, let's say, because I know that's a restaurant. There's going to be 2 2-acre lots on that parcel, Nicole?
No.
No. Okay, that's what I thought.
So right now the entire parcel is almost 5 acres, I guess. And if we approve the severance, they would be then, what would be remaining would be approximately 2.5 acres on each.
Okay.
So
So
the
I
main
think
parcel.
Yeah.
Is,
I know the property from driving by many times. So I think what Marcel was getting at is the retained lands, as it's labeled, are not agricultural. They have a new house that's been built there recently. the severed lands are agricultural or have been in the last number of years. Is that kind of the view of the planners?
Yes, through the chair. Yes, and the overarching designation has remained the same. So there is unique zoning on the site. To give some back history, there was a previous proposal quite some years ago now, which looked at a use that encompassed not only what you can see on the slide as severed lands and retained, but also the section to the south and where the restaurant that we know is today. There's a larger development proposed, and so that's where this kind of unusual zoning comes from that you see as a part of your report. So there was a specific use proposed. And so each of these kind of components had first a holding was placed on what is proposed as a severed. In addition to that, there were specific uses outlined for each of these zones. So it wasn't necessarily an open space, a typical open space zone. There was very specific uses which were to be permitted. And that was in relation to this site's relation to these two major roadways, acknowledging it's near to arterials with St. John's Road and Norfolk Street or Highway 24 for the touring public or the traveling public. At that time, that was the thinking. But the designation remains the same. There's never been an official plan amendment to move this out of the agricultural lands.
Okay.
Okay, if there's any member of the public that wishes to speak regarding this application, you can do so now.
Would that be me, William?
Yes, and I'm just curious, William, the applicant's is on my file is David Troiani. Can you tell me what your relationship is then?
Yes, I'm his agent, and it's on there that I'm his agent, speak for him.
Okay.
And I've been doing this for quite a few years, and I would like to make a few comments with regards to what was said here. That property is vacant land. There is nothing happening on it. It's absolutely vacant. In I believe 2001, the town was originally going to put a street through there. I had the documents, and they were going to put St. John's Road through there. Instead, they went around the other way. If you look on the drawings, you'll see the two lines, which shows the street, which we're going to go through right beside between this lot and the sushi house next door. I also noted that you've put down that it's 50 meters frontage on, and in fact, it's 38 showing now. And the possibilities when the property was purchased, it said that it could be a mini golf, a hotel, a bed and breakfast, a gas station, and quite a few other things. They're all on the list. I have the list. So that means they could potentially put a hotel on this property, and then you run into the issues. You say, well, why would you want to put a hotel? Then you've got a problem with a septic bed. Now, you could probably put a septic bed that would fit it, but it doesn't make sense. A new home was just built facing Norfolk, and all the properties around this, except for one, are single-family residential.
Is now joining.
Every property around here is single-family residential, except for the church across the street and the sushi place, which is the same. The taxes on the property that you can't use is $11,000 per year, and what they were originally asking for was a severance. And I did call back, I guess the other day, and I said they're not against severing a straight line from the sushi. If you look at the property, the sushi has a line that splits between the sushi house and this 2.38 acre parcel of land, which leaves 2.39 acres of land. So they're saying they would accept a severance between this property and the new home, which could be turned into residential, and the back could still remain with approximately 3.5, 4 acres for the same zoning. So they're not They're not saying they have to sever off this portion, but when you read the information, it says that it's the only parcel in open space. And it's not even being used for a farm for 20 years. So I guess what I'm saying is maybe the rules change in 20 years because it doesn't make sense for this to say agriculture when nobody's using it for agricultural. I think somebody made the comment it could be a grow house or a marijuana plant or something, but they're simply trying to make it usable property. And if you allowed the severance between the new home and this property, I think, I figured it out, I think they would have about 500 feet on St. John's Road. 689.51 feet on St. John's Road still. So they're open, but they certainly aren't open to paying $10,000 or $11,000 taxes on property that can't be used. It doesn't make any sense. But the property breakfast, and there was nobody against it except for the planning department, is what I see. And they also made a comment that they don't really have a problem with it. It's just they wanted to see something else. So I'm not sure, but this, why would you want a gas station there? Why would you want a hotel there? So I don't know if you're looking at the map I'm looking at, but where the brand new house is, they're saying sever it off across there on Norfolk Street and leave the 689.51 feet with 5 acres or 4.5 acres for remaining commercial. I mean, I think what I heard today is somebody could build a house on the other piece, which is 3 acres, and put their barn or their workshop on this 2.38 acre piece of property.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Does the committee have any further questions for the agent?
Through the chair, was there an attempt made to rezone it by any chance?
The old fellow owned it for, I believe he died not too long ago, but he has a approved site plan for the property from 2001, which includes a hotel on that property, on that piece, and mini golf.
Linda? I'm going to move a deferral.
Okay. So
Lisa
Alan
is
has
gonna
moved
second
for a
that.
deferral. Do we have a seconder for that?
Lisa will second that.
Okay, just a second here. Okay, so the reason for the deferral then, Alan?
Well, I'm confused as to, I'm looking at the mapping and I'm looking at the parcel that's severed lands, which has been agriculture fairly recently, as far as I know, or at least a good chunk of it has. And this agent seems to be confusing me with the retained lands and the new house and the uses. So I'm really not clear on this whole application the way it's gone right now. So I think the applicant and the agent and the planning staff need to get back together and clarify a few things for us.
I will tell you that we attended the last 6 months.
Well, I would encourage you and to get together and hammer it out.
Yeah,
I won't support an approval anyway. So there you go. That's why I'm giving the applicant a chance to defer it and work through it with staff. The committee really hates to, in my opinion, refuse applications just for the sake of refusing, and we like to, let people have the opportunity to hammer it out. So that's my reasoning for deferral.
I greatly appreciate that, and I'm willing to meet anytime after next week. Anytime.
Okay, so the agent's on board with the deferral?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm gonna say we're suggesting a deferral. I'm just writing this out for the purpose of reviewing and possibly revising the application with planning staff. Is that acceptable? Oh, and I
Yeah,
have
that's awesome. Yeah.
okay, and staff's gonna chime in here.
Yeah, through the chair, to be clear, like the land is designated agricultural. So based on the provincial policies, as I highlighted before, and I'm happy to go back to them, we would not be able to support any severance of this land. The way the provincial policy statement is currently written, there would be other planning application opportunities. And to clarify kind of what Alan was speaking to, so what we're looking at is before us is the severed lands and retained as indicated on the drawings. Proponent applicant is speaking to some alternatives. However, planning staff do consider those still to be quite different applications than what is being proposed here. And yes, we have communicated with the applicant for quite some time. Ultimately, the overarching policy doesn't change. And so that the severance, regardless of the size, in this context, unless it is for agricultural uses, cannot be supported by staff. And just to kind of further that, the reasoning for that is for that long-term preservation of agricultural, and this isn't this site specifically. It's a universal policy, and again, kind of creating lots. We have a few options in agricultural from the province, one of which requires a minimum lot size for lot creation of 40 hectares. It doesn't meet the policy, and it's not surplus farm dwelling severance either. And so the policies, we just simply do not have policies to support what is being proposed, even within our zoning bylaw. So there would be additional planning applications that would be required through the zoning bylaw, the official plan, and still at the end of the day, staff aren't confident that it would meet the intent of the provincial policy statement, which is what we were trying to articulate. And I apologize if that wasn't clear. And just to speak to those additional uses, yes, in 2001, there was an application for a unique, but it's an existing site plan that was registered, but has not been acted on. The same building requirements would apply today as any other site. But before us today is simply the severance of that site plan is just another layer of planning policy. So yeah, I'm happy to clarify more. It's just to make sure that we can go back to the table and we're happy to have further discussions. It's just important to understand that from our perspective, no severance of agricultural designated lands is something that can be supported if it does not fit within the provincial policy statement guidelines.
And can I comment on that, please?
Certainly.
The only section of this property that is agricultural is the piece in the square. The rest is not agricultural. No one is asking to just sever that piece off and build a house. We are asking to make use of that property, and that is the only section that's agricultural, and you can do something with agriculture. You can put a barn on it. You can put a marijuana plant on it. There's a lot of things you can do on it, but we're not asking just to sever that section off and build a house on it. We're willing to add a piece of the old part, which is commercial, and leave it with the agricultural piece. And if somebody wants to put a greenhouse on it, so be it. But we're asking for a little piece of a severance to add to that piece. We've made that clear. That's on the drawing.
Okay. I still move for a deferral.
Yeah,
And
no problem.
I'm still not clear myself, Alan. So we'll deal with that, I guess, recommendation right now. We have it's moved and seconded. So the recommendation is a deferral for the purpose of reviewing and possibly revising the application. So I'm going to go through this. All in favor? Adam?
Yes.
And Alan?
Yes.
Lisa? Lisa seconded it, so I'm assuming she's in favor. Lisa, are you there?
Sorry, it's not letting me. It's cutting out. But yes, I'm in
Okay.
favor.
Okay, Marcel
Yes.
and Rudy.
Yes.
Okay, so we're deferring this application. And just with regards to the application, the agent is suggesting that they're willing to do some other things, and I'm not really clear what you're suggesting, so.
Can I make one comment on that then?
Well, I think
Well,
if-
no,
this is
because
not the time.
we've already
Okay.
deferred the application.
Okay, thank you.
So when the application comes back, if those other things could be more clear, suggesting would be helpful. And then the other question, when it does come back for staff to be prepared to answer, is the two parcels. My understanding is that they're agriculture in the official plan, but those two parcels are zoned differently.
Yes.
And so one is commercial and one is open space, is what I'm understanding.
Correct.
Pardon?
Correct. That's correct.
So yeah, it has two zones, but it's one parcel. So it actually is a parcel with split zoning, and all of that pertains to the earlier application,
right,
with the zoning and then the site plan that followed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when this comes back to the committee, my question will be, as it stands today, if the applicant wanted to build, say, on the open space parcel that's zoned open space, say they wanted to put a campground there, or a driving range, would they be allowed to do that today? That's when it comes back. That'll be my question, because the zoning isn't going to change between now and then.
I think I'll add the approved site plan to it, and I think that might clear something up when you look at it and say, well, why does it allow all that, but it doesn't allow a house when it says it allows a house?
Well, that's not a question for this committee.
Yeah,
I would like it deferred to the next meeting if I could.
But we have deferred the application, so we're going to move on.
Yep, thank you very much.
But we'll try and address those questions for the next meeting.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Have a great night. Thanks for the staff. William
is now exiting.
Okay, the next application is file number ANPL 2021111. The applicant is Sandy Shore Farms, and then the address is 240 Lakeshore Road, Port Burwell. And I'll ask staff to give the report.
An application has been received to permit the construction of an addition to an existing dwelling requiring relief of section 11.1.1 of the Norfolk County zoning bylaw to construction in the hazard land zone. So the subject lands are 52.2 acres in area and have a depth of approximately 340 meters and a frontage of approximately 665 meters on the south side of Lakeshore Road in the geographical township of Houghton. The subject lands contain a dwelling with an attached garage, a barn, a pump house, and 2 existing sheds. The lands are used for residential and agricultural purposes and are surrounded by like uses. Again, given the subject matter, this was reviewed by Long Point Region Conservation as well. So the proposed application to permit the construction of an addition to the existing single detached dwelling in the hazard land meets the 4 tests of the minor variance in the following ways. The application conforms to the general intent and purpose of the official plan because the development, as supported by Long Point Region Conservation Authority, meets the technical guidelines for development within hazardous lands. The application conforms to the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as the proposed addition will support the existing uses on the property and meet the technical guidelines for development within the hazardous lands. The application is appropriate because it promotes the continued residential use of the property, and ensures the protection of the natural environment and limits further impact by building onto the existing structure. You can kind of tell, I think in the previous, where the line is. Yeah, so you can kind of see where the line is just for the committee, obviously above where the property line is. So trying to keep it at kind of the maximum distance away from that slope, which is further back, but just also the flood line and etc. Is our key. And finally, kind of adding to that, the application is minor because the enlargement of the existing structure with the attached garage is anticipated to have minimal adverse impacts, just given where it's located on the surrounding area. And the approval does not further reduce the compliance of the property, just given how far it is away from the hazardous lands and given the context of the site and its limitations. So staff support the application and recommend that it be approved.
Okay, do the committee members have any questions for staff? Okay, no questions. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak regarding this application? Okay, staff are recommending approval. Could I have a committee member move that recommendation?
Alan moves approval.
Thank
I'll
you,
second
Alan.
that. Marcel, second it.
Thank you, Marcel. In accordance with Section 45(1) of the Planning Act, the proposed development and requested relief is considered appropriate development, minor in nature, and it maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw. And no public input was received and therefore has not been considered as part of this application. All in favor of approval? Adam?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Marcel?
Yes.
And Rudy?
Yes.
Okay, that application is approved. The next application is file number ANPL 2021-13. The applicant
Is now exiting.
is G. Douglas Valley Limited in care of Eldon Darbison. And I'll ask staff to give the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. An application received to permit the construction of a detached two-story garage and two-story accessory structure with a cumulative usable floor area of 670 square meters. This is split 335 square meters for ground floor and 335 meters for second story. In addition, this is to permit a height of 9.5 meters for accessory structures. The subject lands are approximately 1.55 hectares in area with a depth of 350 meters and approximately 41 meters of frontage on the south side of Concession 6 Townsend. This is west of Bill's Corner. The subject lands are currently farmed, but not by the owner. The subject lands contain an existing single detached dwelling and two accessory structures along the west of the property. Through the application, the applicant has indicated that the two accessory structures will be removed to accommodate new accessory development.
Scott, can I interrupt you? I can't hear you. Somebody's phone is on.
Yeah, I'll get rid of that. So we would ask everyone who signs on to please mute themselves. Oh, seems like
Here we go.
seems like we did. Thanks, Alan. You scared them away. So to get back, oh, 1 second. Nope. There we go. As I was saying, so there's two accessory structures which are existing, which is down near the front of the along Concession 6 Townsend. There will be removed to accommodate for this development. The surrounding land uses are agricultural lands with large operations. To the immediate west, you have a horse farm. South and north of them are other agricultural operations. The exception to this is two estate lots to the right of the property. Staff did note during the site visit a heavy tree line along the front and west property line of the subject lands and the prevalence of large accessory structures on neighboring lands, which are quite common through the county's rural areas. 1 second, I'm just adding, I think they got in. Okay, sorry, heading back to the PowerPoint. In terms of planning comments, there are the 2 variances at hand. That is the, 1 sec, sorry. Oh, I froze. Sorry, my our presentation is frozen a little, so I'll keep talking while we keep moving forward. There are 2 variances being asked: floor area and the height. The have split that usable floor area into ground floor and second story. The reason being for this is the amount requested in staff's opinion and agent's opinion does not meet the test of a minor variance. But if they were to be split between a first floor and a second floor, it is staff's opinion they do meet. And the reason for this is the proposed accessory story requires that 470 square meters to permit where the maximum is usually 200 square meters, resulting in that 670 square meters. The reason for the large request is to account for those second stories on each of the proposed buildings. When looking strictly at coverage and the footprints for the requested 2 structures, the amount is only 335 square meters. When you're looking at, when staff look at accessory structures in the ag lands, that amount of coverage actually isn't that much in terms of usable floor area. So really half of the whole value is for that second story. And the intent of the second story, as I've been told, is for the personal storage of items because the garage is being used for vehicles and the shop or the proposed accessory structure is for storage of machine equipment, farm equipment, lawn equipment, other items like that that require a large amount of space, and then the second story for those. So the breakdown of this variance is preferred and critical to staff support, as staff found that the flat 760 square meters for usable floor area does not meet the 4 tests of the variance, but the breakdown of it does. So staff would be reviewing this application and have reviewed this application based on the 4 tests of a minor variance. It's staff's opinion that the application, considering the breakdown that I've just explained, does meet the intent. When looking at, in terms of the structure itself, there is a quite large tree line to the west and the north, which does hide from a site visit almost all of the vision or the visual sight from any neighboring property or the road, as well, just in generals of appropriate development. You know, this is a quite large agricultural property, and where, you know, structures are quite common in this area. Doing a site visit, there was nothing out of character that we found that would make staff believe that this would be of an adverse impact. And we found other structures of similar size in the surrounding areas. Staff did note that we did receive a letter of opposition with regard to the application. The letter did outline some concerns when it comes to general issues for water, safety, septic, issues with endangered species and other items like that. I have provided this letter to the committee, and as well to the applicant and agent, who I'm sure will be able to speak with it. So if the applicant and agent after wants to address some of those, they're welcome to. Alternatively, if the member who did provide those comments is available. I'd be happy to speak to them as well. But rounding out my presentation, just circling back to those 4 tests, staff are of the opinion that it does meet the 4 tests of a minor variance and are in support. We have a single condition, and that single condition is a letter of receipt from the building inspector indicating a demolition permit has been approved and confirmation of the 2 existing accessory structures have been removed. That way we know that we're working with a flat 0 when they begin this proposal. So with that, I'll pass it back to Madam Chair, and if anyone has any comments, I'd be happy to address. Thank you.
Okay, do the committee members have any questions for planning staff? Okay, no questions for staff. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak regarding this application?
Yes, my name is Eldon.
Good afternoon, madam.
Oh, I can wait for the public to speak.
No, Mr. Darvison, go ahead.
Okay. Who's speaking?
My name is Eldon Darvis, and I'm representing the applicants.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm actually finding it hard here because some background. That's better. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. This application has been working with staff, and we agree with the plan report. We agree with splitting the gross floor area to between buildings, considering the 2nd story. And we don't have any issues with obtaining those demolition permits simultaneously with the request for the building. We did have a chance to review the letter of concern that was provided. There are a number of items, and I wouldn't mind just addressing them briefly. So, as Mr. Wilson had indicated, there was concern about the site of it, of the proposed structures having a detrimental impact on agricultural properties, that it's sympathetic to the surrounding neighborhood, that they'll devalue the properties in the area, severely impact or damage quality of life. Multiple structures will have an impact on livestock or crops. There are concerns about water and watershed, and the ability of the neighboring property to have clean water for their livestock and crops. There's concerns about a second septic system, and that there's no environmental impact considered as it relates to waste being drained into neighboring properties. The objection included requests for environmental study, and that there should be some regard for the native trees and species in the area. So we've had an opportunity to take a look at that. We have to remember here that the buildings that are being proposed, they're actually in compliance with facts. These, standards that the zoning bylaw establishes to establish no impact. The gross floor area and the height are the requested variances. And in all due respect to the objection that was given, the usable and height does not affect drainage, wildlife, livestock, quality of life, crops. It doesn't have a detrimental impact on the agricultural area. As mentioned in Mr. Wills' presentation, accessory structures are quite common. In terms of the garage themselves along the west side, there is a significant tree line. Those trees are not going to be touched. The existing structures that are there are even closer to the property line than what is being proposed. And in terms of the presence of that building, I mean, if this was a vacant property, technically you could build a house right at the 3-meter setback anywhere on that property. It could be 11 meters. So we're only looking at 9.5. So in terms of the gross floor area, and the building that's proposed in the middle of the property is significantly set back and won't have an impact. There's a tree line along the front as well, which will help mask and somebody's got feedback going again. It's really hard to hear. Sorry. I'll continue while that person gets muted. There are no environmental features that need to be considered. There's no trigger for an environmental impact study. The hazard land zoning that's to the rear of the property is being avoided. The lot grading is going to be approved by the county. Anything to do with the buildings or septic systems are all subject to what I call tests, and these are building code requirements, zoning requirements, and any other legislation that's applicable. So we want to reassure that the neighbor that when the buildings are built, they will be done through all compliance. And there, from a professional planning opinion, it does meet the 4 tests of minor variance based on the conditions imposed by staff, and we totally support those conditions. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Does the committee have any questions for the agent? Okay, no questions. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak regarding this application? You can unmute now.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
And who am I speaking with?
Dean Mugino on behalf of Carol Small.
Okay.
Regarding the variance.
Could you repeat your name, please?
Dean Mugino.
Dean Mugino. On behalf of Carol?
The neighbor to the west, Carol
Okay.
Small.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the planner had brought up that there is significant tree line immediately to his west between the neighboring property. That tree line is approximately 250 feet long from the street, from the road back. From that 250 foot mark, roughly to the very back of the property, it's an open space. In that very area, the 250 to 300 foot back from the street, that's a low-lying watershed area right now. The planning committee haven't supported or giving any documentation that supports. They're going to change. They've got to change the elevation. They've got to change and create access points to go back and forth through that watershed area. It's a low-lying watershed that's right the property to the west, which carries on directly back to a community drainage ditch that's set up in such a way that all that excess watershed would go back to that drainage ditch. The neighbor to the west pays for that drainage ditch on a regular basis for the county to come in and clean out, so that the shed is able to be taken away and dealt with. As mentioned, she does have an agricultural property. She has a cutting horse operation right now, and the back portion of it is being farmed right now as we speak. I mean, there's crops in there that are in the ground, and on occasion she has had cattle in the back that she runs in the back area. So with the addition of this structure that you're talking about, in order to gain access to the structure, they're also talking about putting in an additional septic system for a property that was ideally constructed and a one family operation, a one family home with one single septic, and had drainage that was set up the way it was. So they're going to have to change the slope and elevation of everything in the property in order to not impact what's going on in the neighboring farms. You have a large market garden operation, agriculture operation to the southeast, which I believe are actually using part of the back of their property at this point. And there's as I mentioned, the neighbor to the west has a significant agricultural operation to the west. So when they put this structure, approximately, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I apologize. The 2-story structure that's going back 600 feet. It's basically the middle of their lot. It appears to be the middle of their lot. This 2-story structure, with a septic system beside it. There's been no mention and in the planning, but I believe it alludes to the second story of that structure would be eligible to have a residence or resident status in that area, which is, correct me if I'm wrong with the planning, the planner, Mr. Planner, but you're looking at an operation. Why would you're putting a septic system beside a garage or a utility garage with the direct intention of having a second residence or another living area above on the second story, which causes great concern when you have an agricultural property, which the elevations are going to be changed. The drainage that's presently in place right now in that low-lying watershed area is going to have to be changed, and we've seen no environmental impact on that, what it's going to do to the water table with the livestock next door or the agricultural crops that are in the ground right now. So for them to just, yes, they're going to tear down the existing buildings. They're set for demolish, or they're setting up their permits, and nobody
is now joining.
Nobody wishes to impede somebody's ability to better a property. However, when you're doing so and impacting the neighboring community, it just causes a great concern. That, I mean, you've got the environmental impact of what it does to the livestock and the agriculture is one thing. We have native species in the trees, which is really reassuring to hear that none of those trees are going to come out, and there's going to be no harm to the trees in any way that are existing, that are mature, and have been in time. Reassuring to hear that they're not doing that. However, I would like to see some kind of environmental impact study done on what they're doing. We haven't seen what their drainages and elevations are going to be, and how it's going to impact the neighboring communities.
Okay, I'm going to ask staff to address your questions there.
Of course, thank you. And thanks for voicing some of those concerns. So I'll speak to a few of them. First and foremost, no habitable space is permitted in these accessory structures. So you have that guaranteed. In terms of setting up another septic system, all septic beds need to be approved by the building department. So that has a review on whether it will have any impact on the surrounding area. So you have guarantee that it won't. In terms of grading and drainage, the engineering department has notified in their comments, and this is standard in my report, that a grading plan is required at time of a building permit. So they will be seeing how that property will be affected in terms of drainage. So part of that was to ensure all drainage is kept on site and to only only exit through appropriate means. So everything should be reviewed in that extent. So covering habitable space, septic, as well as grading. I believe the last item was regard to that environmental impact study. It's planning staff's professional opinion that this is not a trigger for an EIS. It is outside the any significant trigger that would be required. So it's staff's opinion that that requirement is not needed here today. So I hope I've been able to answer, and I'll also open the door to the agent, if they wanted to provide any further comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Yes, so you've covered all the matters appropriately. There are provisions in place to make sure that the objector's concerns are addressed. And yes, the zoning bylaw will not permit a residential use with those accessory buildings, and that is not the intent.
If I may rebut, Mr. Wilson, and in terms of what they've done so far, I mean, if what's been done so far is any indication of the type of or how the neighbor is going to work, they came in, they put they've already impeded the natural drainage. They came in and put a driveway in and basically caused their backyard to flood. And I know the neighbor to the west has had several issues right now where they've had to notify bylaw because the individual has actually been out there with a sump pump pumping the water out of the area where he's dammed up into the neighboring property, in essence, flooding out her back paddock area, which is, she spent substantial amount of money on building this operation as a cutting horse operation. And by that having that drainage come over and pump directly into her riding pen is impacting the footing and quite frankly, the safety of the animals when they're riding and working them in the back pen. So, I mean, I can appreciate that you've taken all the planning into consideration. However, at this point, I mean, the confidence we have in that this neighbor is going to abide by, you know, certain things and follow the lay of the law as far as, you know, the zoning impact and everything else. I think there needs to be greater information passed along, especially to the objector as far as how that elevation. You mentioned the elevation. Yes, it's been approved and it's by code, but I believe that information needs to be shared to the neighboring properties, how that elevation and the drainage is going to impact directly those neighboring properties. As I mentioned, to the west, there's from the back middle of that property, immediately to the west, there's a natural drainage pattern which goes back to that drainage ditch. And by changing elevations, it changes the watershed. It essentially impacts those areas where crops are in play right now. So I think it's only prudent that you supply an elevation and environmental, and look at it from an environmental standpoint rather than just a development standpoint, because what they're doing by changing those elevations directly impacts the neighboring properties.
Okay, thank you.
It's reassuring to know that the bylaw will not allow a second-story building or a second-story living environment on that second story of the proposed structure. That was the indication. I believe that was. I guess that was a summation that was derived from that second septic system. Which, if they have a septic system that's already in place, that's adequate for the house, the single-family dwelling, why is it the need for a second septic system?
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Does staff have any answers with regards to the second septic system?
The indication I have is that there will be a shower and washroom in the bottom of the proposed accessory structure for use for the person working in the accessory structure, I believe. And I would ask the applicant or agent to correct me, but there is intended to have a bit of a workshop in that location. Nothing regarding or involved with a commercial use or a home occupation that would be a trigger. So they want to have their own understanding shower and washroom in there to allow them to clean themselves up after we'll have them. In response to, yeah, and I would just clarify as well, it's not just the the second story. It's no habitable spaces permitted on either, no accessory dwelling unit is permitted on either floor. So the first floor or the second floor of either of those structures.
Mr. Wilson, may I respond? Madam
Go
Chair?
ahead.
It's reassuring to know that there'll be no residential structure. However, now you've just mentioned that there'll be no commercial property or use of that garage, but you are saying there's a workshop where they're going to have the ability to shower. What type of work will be taking place in that? Because it is so far back in the property, which is that would be back in the main behind the main riding pen, that's the agricultural area where cattle are would run out, and it's fenced in for that purpose, for the purpose of cattle. If the noise and that comes from that garage being so far back in the property and being right adjacent to that west property on the west, that would have a negative impact again on your livestock. If they're running a welding shop, if they're running some kind of an industrial facility out of that garage.
Through the chair.
It's not simply a storage shed, Mr. Wilson. I mean, you alluded that the resident or the agricultural properties in the area have larger buildings in there. Those larger buildings are drive sheds where they park their machinery and the doors are closed. It's not work going on. It's not industrial or commercial intent. It's agricultural where things are parked and it's quiet. When you have animals and livestock, you have the noise impact on the livestock is negative, and it's a detriment to the livestock. It causes them, if you're running cattle for market and they're stressed because of negative interference through noise and things that are taking place within a shop of that nature, it impacts your ability to put gain on your livestock in order to take them to market and actually make a profit on it. If it was dairy cattle, it would impact and impede their ability a dairy to produce milk. So there is an impact based on what you're saying and where you're putting that second story building back in perspective to the large pasture area, which is being currently has a crop on it. But when that crop comes off and the horses go out or cattle go out into that, or livestock go out into that back area, this second story building that is non-commercial, non-residential, that they're going to be doing work, which they have to have a shower in and a washroom in. I'm sorry, but I have a problem with taking it at face value without this environmental impact, without schematics on what the drainage is going to do, and I would maintain that the neighbor to the west will oppose this.
Okay, we've heard your comments, and I'm thanking you for your comments. The committee's going to move on and make our decision. And I just want to remind you that if you are not satisfied with the decision of the committee, there is an opportunity to appeal. Okay. Does the committee have any further comments or questions for staff or the agent? Okay, we're going to move on then. So staff are recommending the application be approved subject to conditions. And could I have someone from the committee move that recommendation?
Rudy moves approval, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Rudy. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Madam Chairman.
Marcel, thank you. Okay, in accordance with Section 45(1) of the Planning Act, the proposed development and requested relief is considered appropriate development, minor in nature, and it maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw, and that public input was received and has been considered as part of this application. Okay, all in favor of approval? Adam? Are you there, Adam? Alan?
No.
Lisa? Are you there, Lisa?
Yep, I'm here, but I would say no as well.
Okay. And Marcel?
Yes.
Rudy?
Yes.
And I'll go back to Adam because I didn't hear a comment from him. Okay. And I'm going to vote for approval. So that application is approved. Okay. The next application is file number ANPL 2021116. The applicant is Michael Saunders and Amanda Biddle, and the property is located at 4134 Lakeshore Road,
Dean
St.
Lugano.
Williams.
Is now exiting.
And I'll ask staff to give the report.
One sec, we're just getting to the slide. Okay, an application has been received 40-foot by 50-foot detached garage to permit a total usable floor area for all accessory structures on the property of 297.32 square meters. The applicant is requesting a relief of 97.32 square meters to the maximum of 200 square meters for accessory structures in the agricultural zone. The subject lands are designated agricultural in Norfolk County's official plan and are zoned A, agricultural, in the zoning bylaw. The subject lands are approximately 3,864 square meters in area with a depth of 84 meters and approximately 64 meters of frontage to the south side of Lakeshore Road, west of St. Williams. The subject lands contain an existing single detached dwelling and 2 accessory structures along the western property line. The surrounding subject land uses are agricultural. The applicant is proposing to construct a 2-story accessory structure with an attached lean-to and covered entrance. The approximate footprint of the structure is 224 square meters with approximately 74 square meters of attic space for storage. Since there is an accessible attic, the usable floor area must be accounted for in terms of the total for the site. Therefore, the requested variance is to permit that 2-story accessory structure with 297 square meters of usable floor area. County staff are looking at this one in terms of the surrounding land uses as well as what's being proposed. The subject is quite large, and the proposal is tucked to the southeast corner. As I mentioned previously, the footprint of that structure is actually only 224 square meters, and that attic space is that additional 74. Staff would note in our review that where you have that 73 square meters of dedicated attic space, it probably will have 0 to no impact on the surrounding land uses. And that's being because there is no height increase to the proposed. If there was a height increase to the proposed, that may have an impact visually or otherwise. But since there is just essentially a single-story structure with that attic space, any additional impact really is negatable because of that. Even considering the additional space, staff do believe that the proposed meets the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, meets the general intent and purpose of the official plan, is desirable and appropriate, and is minor in nature. Staff did receive comments with regard to the application and would note that there was no major comments of concern, just our general requirements when it comes to grading plans at the time of a building permit, as well as if there's any changes or modifications to the entrance, that be addressed through the engineering department. With that, staff would again note that we are in support of the application and recommending its approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, does the committee members have any questions for planning staff? Okay, no questions?
No septic system, right? Just kidding.
Yeah. Okay, and is there any member of the public that wishes to speak regarding this application? Okay, and we have a recommendation from staff that the application be approved. Could I have somebody move that recommendation?
Motion for approval from Lisa.
Lisa, thank you. And a seconder.
Alan will second that.
Thank you, Alan. All in favor? Adam? Alan?
Yep.
Lisa?
Yes.
Marcel?
Yes.
Rudy?
Yes.
Okay, that application has been approved. Oh, okay. Okay, the next application is file number ANPL 2021117. The applicant is Matthew Walker, and the property is located at 1544 Norfolk County Road 21, Delhi. And staff, could you please give the report?
Through you, Madam Chair. An application has been received to construct a 60 by 50 feet accessory building requiring relief of 172 square meters from the maximum usable floor area for all accessory buildings of 200 square meters to permit a usable floor area of 372 square meters. The subject lands are approximately 3,968 square meters or 0.98 acres in total in size, and they front onto Norfolk County Road 21 in the geographic township of North Walsingham. The lands currently contain an existing dwelling, a shed, and a garage, which is proposed to be demolished and replaced. The surrounding land uses include residential and agriculture, mainly in nature. So the proposed application is to permit an increase in usable floor area, and staff believe it meets the 4 tests for minor variance in the following ways. The application conforms to the general intent and purpose of the official plan because it is consistent with the agricultural policies recognizing the property and financial restraints. They also are kind of taking a building and expanding on it and reutilizing the same space. The application conforms to the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as the increased floor area created by the development of the additional outbuilding and the replacement of an existing supports the existing and permitted use of a single family dwelling. The application is appropriate because it supports the existing use of a single family dwelling and provides an enclosed structure for storing the applicant's vehicles and other assets, which they identified and is explored more through the report by staff. The application is minor because of the relative size of the lot in relation to the lot to the proposed increase in usable floor area and the limited impact on the property. Again, utilizing that same space, just slightly enlarging a footprint. Further, the proposed increase in floor area supports the associated use and a structure which is typical in the area, which is largely farmland. And so just going from that, staff support the application, recommend that it be approved. And there are no conditions attached.
Okay, does the committee have any questions for planning staff? Okay, I actually do have a question. And I'm just looking at the zoning administrator comment, and it's saying that it's not approved for livestock or home industry based business. Now I'm assuming the livestock issue is because of the size of the property?
Yeah, to you. Mainly that's why we have had experience, and I think most small counties are, with livestock appearing in larger type structures in the agricultural related area, but the size of the lot does not permit livestock. So they're just kind of emphasizing that. In a home industry based business, there are existing policies in addition to a minor variance, a process that they would have to engage in to pursue that as well. So they're just emphasizing kind of what this currently would permit. It's been proposed just for storage.
Okay, so are you saying then home industry is no longer just permitted, considered a permitted use in the agricultural area? Has that changed?
No, home industry would be permitted. It just has to meet the certain policies which are outlined in the zoning.
Okay, thank
Still
you.
the same.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions from committee members? Okay, and is there any member of the public that wishes to speak regarding this application? Okay, we have a recommendation from staff that the application be approved. Could I have a committee member move that recommendation?
Rudy moves approval.
Okay, I got Rudy.
Alan
And a second, Alan seconder. All in favor, Adam? Okay, Alan?
Yeah.
Lisa? Yes. Marcel?
Yes.
And Rudy?
Yes.
Okay, the application is approved. Okay, the next application is file number ANPL 2021118. The applicant is Doug Brazier, and the location is 594 Queensway West in Simcoe. And I will ask staff to give the report.
Through you, Chair. An application has been received to construct an addition onto an existing accessory structure requiring relief of 116 square meters for the maximum usable floor area for accessory structures of 200 square meters to permit a total usable floor area of 316 square meters. The subject lands are approximately 3,968 square meters in total, and this fronts onto the south side of Queensway West in the geographic township of Woodhouse. The lands currently contain an existing dwelling, a shop, a shed, and a garage. And you can see there's a little pool attached to the dwelling as well. The surrounding land uses are residential and there are some commercial in nature. So the proposed application is to permit an increase in usable floor area, and staff believe it meets the four tests in the following way. The application conforms to the general intent of the official plan because it is consistent with the ag policies, recognizing the property. And I'm not sure if the applicant is online, but I'll let them speak to that. The application conforms to the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as an increased floor area created by the development of the addition to the existing accessory building, supports an existing and permitted use of a single family dwelling. And the application is appropriate because it supports the existing use of the single family dwelling and provides additional living space to further support the needs of the family, utilizing the main residential use. And just to expand on that, that's what I was referring to before. Proposal would be to have this addition to allow some more family members space in the existing dwelling for living. And the purpose of this space would be for an office space, kind of an extension to the main dwelling during COVID era when we work from home. And I believe it also includes a small washroom just to serve that office purpose. Finally, the kind of the last component is whether or not it is minor. And because of the relative size of the lot in relation to the proposed increase of usable floor area and the limited impact on the property, staff, we believe it is minor. And further, the proposed increase in floor area supports the associated use and structure, which is typical in the area, which is still a mix of farmland, although it is zoned for kind of a variety of uses. So staff support the application and recommend that it be approved.
Okay, thank you. Does the committee have any questions for planning staff? And are there any members of the public that wish to speak regarding this application? Okay. We have a recommendation for approval. Could I have a committee member move that recommendation?
Alan moves approval.
Thank you, Alan. And a seconder?
Marcel will second that.
Thank you, Marcel. Okay, all in favor? Lisa?
Yes.
Marcel?
Yes.
Rudy?
Yes.
Alan?
Yeah.
Okay, and I think we've lost Adam. So in accordance with section 45(1) of the Planning Act, the requested leaf is considered appropriate development, minor in nature, and it maintains the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, and no public input was received and therefore has not been considered as part of this application. The application has been approved. Okay, our last application, file number PL 2021119. The applicant is 1064928 Ontario Limited, and it's for 500 Church Street East in Delhi. And I'll ask staff to give the report.
All right, so this is an application to sever a parcel having a frontage of 32 meters.
Is now exiting.
An area of 0.668 hectares or 1.65 acres. Retain a parcel having
Is now exiting.
an area of 7.151 hectares or 17.67 acres to create a right-of-way and to facilitate a plan of subdivision. So the subject application is part of a larger application to facilitate a plan of subdivision with the number 28 TPL 2020-198 and is accompanied by a zoning bylaw amendment ZNPL 2020-199. I would note both of those went before council yesterday and were approved by council. The subject application, or subject lands, I should say, were previously subject to applications, which has come before committee in the past, BNPL 2020-222 and BNPL 2020, I think it should be, it says 022. That was a typo. It should be, I think, 221. Both applications were approved subject to conditions and an existing right-of-way extension for Argyle Avenue currently exists. However, in its current location, it would separate an existing irrigation pond from the existing agricultural use, which you can kind of see where it comes through on the slide for you. The subject application would facilitate a road right-of-way south of the existing that would allow the agricultural lands to stay connected and would provide an appropriate entrance and exit point for future phases of the development and a connection through Fertilizer Road. So planning staff do consider the subject application to be consistent with the policies of the PPS and to conform to the. Oh, did it die?
That's
okay. Conform to the official plan. Staff support this application and recommend that it be approved, subject to the attached conditions. And additional conditions regarding the overall development of the site will be applied through the draft plan stage of the associated plan of subdivision process. And so those conditions were actually provided through the application yesterday. Just give us one moment here. We're having another technical issue. So we're having a bit of musical chairs. So now come over here and you'll hear your chair.
Okay, sorry, we're having a few more technical difficulties because my computer just died. Thank goodness we're on the last application. Okay, so do we have any questions from the committee for staff? Okay, no questions? Okay, I actually do have a couple questions. And I understand that from your report that the council approved the subdivision development. And you had mentioned that the official plan has designated that land industrial. And I have a couple questions. So council was aware of that and they changed the designation then? They approved the designation change?
So that part actually isn't, sure, through you, Chair.
Okay.
So if committee looks at their report, I don't believe, here, let me just jump back to my presentation. That will help. You're probably seeing double. So looking at the screen, you previously looked at the application's kind of west of where the Argyle extension comes through, and it leads out to that edge. The only thing that this is facilitating would be to allow the road to go through. It is not to put residential or anything in this area. So all it is connecting the existing residential, which is up here. I think this part, I built my map in here. The existing, so on page, well, it's your map 2 for the committee. So it would keep all the urban residential would stay where it is. The protected industrial is not affected by this. It's just simply adding this piece. They're providing, or the applicant, who might even be on the line, so he might be able to speak to this better. They're providing through the plan of subdivision that western portion, and then they're asking to facilitate this portion here to sever, to kind of connect it all together. Otherwise, what would occur is, one, that the connection wouldn't go all the way through, but it would also kind of slow down or not allow the later developments because that through connection is required. But the piece that kind of the council spoke to, and it is kind of confusing, very confusing, essentially is, instead of going straight through, it's now going to jog through. What is a little confusing on the drawing, and I'll draw committee's attention to it. So you see what looks almost like it looks like a road, the dotted lines. That's actually the hydro corridor. Yeah.
I'm familiar with
Yeah. So if you're thinking the road goes that way, it's a little bit different than that. It's more of a curve to the road. But just to clarify, for myself, I can see how that's really confusing on the mapping as well.
Okay, so the protected industrial land is still in place?
Yes.
Okay.
The only thing this would facilitate is just severing the road allowance to allow a road to be built in protected industrial. And then this piece would go back here, essentially moving the road.
Okay, because Norfolk County owns that road like that property there.
Yes.
So
they facilitated, so conditional on this, they facilitated a sale back to the owner. So then it would just basically move the tail end of Argyle down this way to allow for the.
I see. I get it.
It goes south, and for the viewers at home, south where the agricultural starts, and then east kind of across.
Yep.
And to allow that, the water, you can't see it on our mapping.
Yeah.
The water, agricultural use.
Yeah, I see the pond.
Yeah.
In the aerial shot.
I fully understand. It's quite a confusing.
Okay, I was just more concerned about the protected industrial zoning. And my other question is, on the zoning applications, does economic development staff get circulated on those? Do you know?
Yes. So if it's for like a larger development, or if it's for commercial use or anything like that. So this is commercial land. So yes, they would be circulated.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, that was all of my questions. Now, is there any other questions from the committee? Okay, and is there any member of the public that wishes to speak regarding this application?
Yes, I'm Joe Chalice. I'm representing this application.
Okay.
We've reviewed the conditions and they're acceptable, but I'm also here to answer any questions.
Hopefully I explained that appropriately,
Yeah.
Joe.
Yeah, I was just concerned with the protected industrial land. Okay, so if there's no other members of the public that want to speak, then we have a recommendation, the application be approved subject to conditions. Could I have a committee member move that recommendation?
Alan moves approval.
Thank you, Alan. And a seconder.
Rudy seconds.
Thank you, Rudy. Okay, the subject application is consistent with the related policies of the Provincial Policy Statement 2020 and the Norfolk County Official Plan, and no public input was received and therefore has not been considered as part of this application. All in favor of approval? I think we've still lost Adam, so Alan?
Yep.
Lisa? Oh, Lisa lost connection too. Marcel?
Yes.
And Rudy?
Yes.
Okay, the application is approved, and that concludes our application portion of the meeting. And I'm just going to ask
Marcel
if the...
Van Horn.
Oh, sorry, yes. The
Is
adjournment.
now exiting.
Okay. Is there any other business from the committee? Okay, no other business. I do actually have one question for Alan. I'm wondering if you're available to chair the July meeting.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
I was gonna say welcome back, but I guess not now.
I know. I'm feeling a little sheepish about asking you to do that. But I appreciate it if you're available then.
Sure thing.
Okay. And if there's no other business, then I have a resolution that we adjourn the meeting and meet at the next regular session being held Wednesday, July 21st, 2021. And could I have someone move that? Move for adjourn. Pardon?
Rudy will move. Rudy will move.
Okay, thank you, Rudy. And a seconder?
Sure thing.
Who was that, Alan?
Telling you.
Okay, thank you.
We don't want to adjourn.
And all in favor, Marcel?
He's gone.
Marcel's gone. Okay, so we're adjourned at, what time do you have?
7:37.
7:37. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Welcome back, Linda.
Thank you.